Hello there and welcome back to Strike Me Pink, the short, sharp South Australian sports podcast named in honour of the great Ken KG Cunningham and his famous catch cry, Strike Me Pink. I'm alongside South Australia's number one sports presenter, Tom Wren. I'm Ben Hook. We are big opinions, local passion, no wasted time. Let's get into it. Rehnny, good afternoon. Nice to see you. Have you had an opportunity to hug an English friend of yours after the disaster of this morning, after leading in the World Cup semi-final and blowing it and going down 2-1?
Yeah, I've got a really good mate of mine who's English, and he was riding it all the way on a few chat groups, like I'm sure you are, Hooky, and a lot of the listeners and viewers out there. And they needed a bit of love this morning. Argentina again, heartbreaking for them, but you've got to question a few of the things they did once they scored. It was pretty wild stuff this morning.
Well, just take us through it very quickly for those who haven't watched it. This was one of the all-time great park the bus attempts, and it spectacularly failed when the finish line was in sight.
Exactly right. So they went one in Anthony Gordon, who plays with Newcastle, put them up. It was a beautifully worked goal from the English. And within half an hour of getting through to a World Cup final, their first major final since '66 when they won it. And then, like you say, Hooky, Thomas Tuchel, the manager, he's German. Perhaps it's more of a cultural thing there. And in his psyche, he brought on defenders. I think for the last half an hour, I saw a stat, Hooky. It had been pretty even, the possession, 50-50. They were 12% in the last half hour because they just tried to protect the lead. Now, against most countries like Australia, and that's all due respect, and Poland and other countries, that might work. But against Argentina, if you give them a sniff, they will go at you. I was really fascinated to see that one player that played under Sir Alex Ferguson, Wayne Rooney, was probably the strongest critic afterwards. And that's because his mantra was always, when you score, you go for another one. Go for the jugular. Keep going. Yes, it's risky because you might get scored against, but just step the foot on it. And they went the other way. It's failed, and not surprisingly now, Hooky, it used to be a day's grace for a manager, a coach, whatever, players, with the newspapers coming the next day. Now with social media, it's 5 minutes. People want him gone, and they want him gone yesterday. I wouldn't be surprised if he's gone by the weekend.
Well, it could be two coaches in a week after Brendan McCullum went down. The end of Bazball. So, yeah, my goodness, you know what's going to happen, and we'll talk about the golf, but the Open Championship, one of the famed English names, Justin Rose or Tommy Fleetwood or Matt Fitzpatrick, is going to lose in a playoff on Sunday night. You can almost guarantee that with the disaster that England have had in sport in the last couple of days. Very quickly, Spain versus Argentina. Who's your tip?
Yeah. I'm going to go with Spain. I know that's probably against what a lot of people are thinking. They've conceded one goal this whole tournament, Hooky. Yes. Defensively, they're really sound. They dismantle France, who for me are the best side talent-wise in the competition, and have been lighting it up. They played like it. That was their worst game, and Spain were clinical. I think they could do it again. Argentina are great, but I think Spain are ready. So for me, I think Spain 2-1.
Yeah, I agree. I think Spain, generally in World Cups, and it's been a wonderful World Cup because we've seen so many goals and some brilliant goals as well, but generally the best defensive team tends to get it done. And when the stakes are highest, defence really means a heck of a lot if they can hurt them the other way, and they've got the capacity to do so on the counter-attack. And the other thing about Spain is they'll get a lead and they won't go into that sort of panic defensive mode that England clearly did this morning. So, yeah, probably with you, Tommy. Spain on, Sunday night. It'll be Monday morning our time. Yeah. Which therefore means Argentina will win that 4-0 from there. You can almost take that as a given, can't you? Talk about sides that we'd love to see go on an absolute romp. The Adelaide Football Club tomorrow night takes on the Swans. This looks on paper like a pretty tough task because the Swans, even though they went down to Fremantle last week, look like they're in really, really good shape and just getting themselves organised for finals. But I reckon Adelaide are right in this.
Massively. And look at last year, Hooky. Now, maybe an outlier, but they won by 15 goals, which was extraordinary. They were flying at that time. We've spoken about them on this show a few times and how good they were last year and perhaps peaked a bit earlier, and that was in the midst of it when they won by 90 points. But the thing for me is Sydney are a really great running side, handball happy, which is fantastic when it's going. But the Crows since round 12 are the best pressure side. I think if they can do that and they bring the right pressure, they can shut Sydney down, and I don't think they like it. So they need to bring the heat, and they need to be on from, the moment the ball bounces, because this is a top four defining game. but I think the Crows can do it. It will be tough. Sydney have got a pretty historically good record against the Crows in recent times outside of that one last year. But I think Adelaide are up to their eyeballs in this. And if they want to finish top 4, Hooky, this is a must win. They've got to do it.
Hey, the Adelaide Football Club, number one for defensive effort, number one for pressure. The back half of their game is so well organised. The knock on them is their attacking flair, and particularly out of defensive 50 when they've got the ball. Is that a concern for you? Do you think that's something that they may need to look at, maybe lifting someone out of their midfield, someone who uses the ball really well? I mean, the obvious one is Jordan Dawson. You're robbing Peter to pay Paul a little bit there, but do they need more flair out of their defensive half if they're going to compete with those top-end teams, Sydney, Hawthorn, Fremantle, Brisbane?
It's a great question. I reckon part of it was solved, or a lot of it was solved last week. Wayne Miller back.
Yep.
I thought we're probably realising how important he is. He's a star and he's hard at it too. Like, just watching him closely, and he's been around for a while, but finally had a good run with his body. And I know he was out for 2 weeks with the hamstring, but pretty good the last year and a half outside of that. He's so important. That helped. And this might sound a bit harsh, but I think Rory Laird out will probably help it as well, Hooky, because Hugo Hawker-Hahn's a bit of a ball user.
Yeah.
And if they can get the pill in his hands a bit more, I think he can be that player.
Right, okay.
Unfortunately, Jordan Dawson, of course, they'd love through him. You know, he takes such a good mark, so good in the middle, and his ball use is really good. He'd be great across half back. They might have to do it at times, but I think because they're so deficient compared to those sides you mentioned in the middle, I think he's got to stay there on drift forward. I think that's the better mix. And they've just got to get the ball more often in the hands of Hawker-Hahn. And I think I was shocked that they dropped Hawker-Hahn last week. And it's terrible that Laird's out. I hope he gets back. But I think it might be a blessing that now that's happened, because he's straight back in the side.
Amazing that someone out of the mid-season draft has all of a sudden become such a key weapon for the club. Talk about key weapons. Tex Walker, are you comfortable that he has a week off here?
I love it. I think if he's in the best side, I think they're at a really interesting juncture. It feels like it will be the last year for Tex. I don't think it's a stage management thing of the 700 goals at home like it was with Pendlebury for the record-breaking game.
It's clearly not.
No, I think it's a form thing. I still think he's in their best side though, Hooky, to be honest. I think just what he does and his smarts and everything. That said, I'm really delighted to see Darcy Fogarty finally grab the ball by the horns. His last 3 weeks have been so much better, and he's hitting the scoreboard. And there was a week where Tex wasn't, or, he was sort of the one that said, I'm going to be the man, and Tex, struggled a bit more. So Fogarty's got to keep doing that. But I think you're right. I think it's probably a form thing, which suggests to me, I reckon it's Tex's last season, though they haven't announced it just yet.
Last one on the Adelaide. Yeah, look, I'm probably a little bit more comfortable with it.
Yeah.
I think Adelaide are going to qualify top 6, whether it's top 4 or top 6. They're going to have to almost run the table from here to finish top 4. That's probably maybe a bit beyond them as it is. So I just feel like your point's well made. He is in their best 23, and making sure he's fully firing and ready to go when the conditions are a bit better in late August and September. I don't mind that. Look, I'd love him to play every game. I think he's that important to the team. But when you're in your mid-30s, you've got to sort of pick and choose your battles a bit. And I reckon this is not a bad one for him to miss. Yeah, they're a worse side without him, but I can understand what they're doing. And if it means that he's better equipped to handle September, I'm okay with that, Tom. Hey, one more from you. You're in the Channel 9 newsroom now. I can see that, and I watched you on Channel 9 News last night, and you did have the vision of the Josh Worrell alleged car accident with the pedestrian. Just on the basis of what you've seen and what you know, do you think the Adelaide Football Club handled it well this week?
It's tricky, isn't it? Because I think in hindsight, he would have gone straight to the police, that 90-minute curfew. But I can see why he didn't, because he took the pedestrian to the hospital. I think it's a bit awkward. Maybe they could have been a bit more open with it earlier. But it's always hard when it's a legal matter before the courts. I don't think, from what I could gather on the vision, and you're right to point out alleged incident, it didn't look like it was horrific or an offence where he's going to get prison time or anything, or easy.
No, of course not. It looked wrong place, wrong time, according to the vision. Now, that's just me as an amateur.
Yes.
But I was just interested. You will have a far better feel from me being in and around the news as how you felt the Adelaide Football Club handled it. I've got one query, but I was just interested in how you have seen the week for them.
Yeah, and look, it's hard because they probably can't put him up for an interview or a doorstop, as we call it,
No,
because it's before the courts. And so they've got to be careful with it. So I can understand it's awkward, it's tricky, it's never ideal. Look, I think they've handled it okay without being amazing. They haven't been overly forthcoming with details, but I also understand you probably can't be when it's a situation like this.
the deputy chair of the football club is Linda Fellows, who is one of the most senior police officers in the state. There was a couple of things that struck me. On 5AA, your radio network, Adam Kelly, the general manager of football, said that they hadn't contemplated standing him down. I can't believe you haven't contemplated it. And
Yeah.
I can't believe you haven't had a conversation with your deputy chair to say, where are we at with this? And if he did get in contact with the club and say, hey, this has happened, why wouldn't you get one of your board members who's also one of the most senior police officers and say, hey, what does he need to do here? How they've missed that, I reckon, that's probably the only thing out of it all that surprises me. I'd be stunned if there's any sort of significant penalty against Josh. As
So,
just looking from the vision, it looked like he to a heck of a lot wrong, and it was just almost just an unfortunate situation between the two people. And
yeah.
all of his actions you would think sound reasonable without getting expert advice, but they've got expert advice right there on their board, and it seems like they haven't used it. And I'd be stunned if they didn't think, gee, Linda Fellows would be a good person to bring in and just make sure that we're doing everything right here. And the fact that he's been charged with not only aggravated driving without due care, but also failing to report this to police strikes me as a big miss for a football club like Adelaide, who's got that resource right on their fingertips.
Yeah, particularly, now does it affect performance and all of those factors as well, Wookie? So unwanted distraction, and you're right, probably could have just gone through that process, the football department, just to make sure they're dotting their I's, crossing the T's, so to speak, and just make it easier for everyone, so that the messaging comes out a bit quicker.
Port Fremantle are on Saturday. You expect Fremantle's going to win that pretty comfortably, although I am tempered that by the fact that the last time Port Adelaide seemed to be involved in a real mismatch, they beat Adelaide by, 6-7 goals in the showdown 3 weeks ago. One question for you. Zac Butters may get back, may not. He's probably going. Should the football club offer him some sort of send-off or farewell match if and when he does inevitably play his last game, do the guard of honour and fate him like you would expect for a retiring star? Or if you're leaving clubs, you lose that right?
No, I don't think you need to do it. I think he's too valuable an asset now for Port Adelaide and for what they're potentially going to get out of him to risk an injury, and for whoever the club's going to be, whether it's the Bulldogs, Geelong, Hawthorn, whatever. He's a $2 million player, Hooky. You do not need to do this rigmarole of going through a farewell game. If it's a business, and we understand that it is to a large extent now, it's got to be treated as such. He's too valuable an asset and a player for the next 8 to 10 years. No farewell game. Doesn't need to happen for me.
Agreed. One very quickly, Damien Hardwick. How did he deal with the Adelaide Oval crowd last week? What did you make of it?
Classic distraction, wasn't it? The
Yeah.
side stinks. Bottom four. I think they're the most disappointing side in the competition. I like Damien Hardwick. I think he's trying to have hard conversations with a lot of players and people at that club and trying to change the culture. And there might be a bit of resistance at the moment. But I think with that one, it was I agree it probably isn't ideal. They need to change the system of them getting down there. But all the person's had is a bit of banter. I'm
Yeah.
sure he's heard far worse. It was convenient for me that it came out in that forum post-match to distract from what was a horrific on-field effort from his players.
Yeah. The only thing I'll say that tempers that is that in 2023, almost at the same time of year, it was about July 3 or 4, the Australian cricket team walked off Lords through the long room and were
Yeah.
absolutely berated by a crowd that was frothing at the mouth over the Johnny
Yeah.
Bairstow stumping. And we were all pretty outraged here that the Australian cricket team was subject to that. Now, Damien Hardwick didn't cop anything like the criticism that he was copping, that the Australians were copping when they walked through the long room. But I
Yeah.
am just, I would expect that Adelaide Oval football fans, yeah, you can barrack and cheer and you can have the banter with opposition fans, but when it's the coach, as they're walking through at quarter time or three-quarter time, I don't think it's too much to ask. This was very, very minor on the
Yeah,
Richter scale of things that you could say that are offensive, of course. But at the same time, I would just love us to say, hey, you've got the privilege of sitting right in an area where that coach walks past. Just keep your trap shut. You don't need
yeah,
to say anything. That would be the only thing I would temper against what we've seen. Yes, I think everyone's been well within their rights to say Damien Hardwick clearly sooked it on the basis of the fact that things were going rough on field for him. But yeah, let's just remember when our players have been on the receiving end of that sort of stuff, we've got our hackles up a little bit too. So
great
that's just
point.
one to watch though going forward. Tom, you and I have been waiting for 4 weeks. We've been doing this for 4 weeks, and really we've been focusing in on the Open Championship. It's going to be a magnificent event. It will be played at Royal Birkdale, which is in the northwest coast of England. It's a famed golf area. There are a range of wonderful golf courses here. This is probably their most well-known championship course. It has hosted the Open more times than any other course except the old course at St Andrews. The pros love it because even though it is a links course and there are dunes everywhere, it's a pretty straightforward golf course. It doesn't have the undulating fairways that you often
Mhm.
see on links courses. The greens tend to be pretty big and flat. The bunkers are almost all at 4 o'clock and 8 o'clock. There's no real quirks to this golf course, so it's very popular with the pros. It's also very popular with fans because the big dunes everywhere give people a lot of vantage points to try and watch the sport. The other thing about it, Tom, we've seen some absolute legends of the game win at this venue. So
Mhm.
Arnold Palmer in 1961 and really made it fashionable again for Americans to come and play at this tournament. Ian Baker Finch famously won here in 1991. Peter Thompson has won here twice. And then, of course, more recently, Jordan
Jordan
Spieth
Spieth.
with that
Yep.
outrageous bogey that he made on the 13th. Um, uh, Tom, let's just start with who you expect to be in the mix. We've got very, very hot conditions over there in England. This course is nuclear fast. I've seen players bouncing balls onto the fairway and catching it again at about waist height like it's a Super Bowl. So it's going to be a really different experience for a lot of these players who tend to like it where the ball stops. As soon as it hits the ground, it's going to roll out forever. Who do you think's in the mix on the basis of what we're going to see starting tonight?
Yeah, it's not a stop and drop course like we see in the US, isn't it? It's going to be hard and fast. I love these courses because you have to think about them a bit more. For me, there's a couple that I really like. I think Matt Fitzpatrick's form has been irresistible. I think
Mhm.
he's now an elite ball striker from fairways. I think iron play is probably going to be more important here than driving off the tee. So I really like Fitzpatrick. I know his driving improved, but just his ball striking. I actually like Colin Morikawa for a similar
Yes.
reason. I think he's a really good iron player. So I've got him up there. And then my top Aussie, I know he missed the US Open Cup recently, but I think Cam Smith can produce. So I'm keeping an eye on him, but also Travis Smythe. I've been really impressed with his live play. So they're the ones I'm keeping an eye on. But if I had to pick someone, Matt Fitzpatrick's my man. How about you, Hookie?
Well, I really like Chris Goddard. Has won,
Yeah.
4 times in the last year. He's a proven performer on links courses. He does have the ability to vary his flight. So he can hit it low into the wind and he can hit it high if he needs to. I think he's got the short game to be able to deal with these sorts of conditions. There's only Rory Scotty and Chris Goddard who have been really super successful in these sorts of conditions over the last 3 years. I think what Gotterup's won 5 times, Rory's won 5 times, and Scheffler's won 10. I mean, the
Mm,
obvious one is Scheffler, even though he missed the cut last week. But Chris Gotterup is the guy that I want to keep a bit of an eye on. I think Wyndham Clark is
yeah.
probably going to be reasonably successful here. He's just playing so well. He has the cut ball flight, which I think will allow him just to be able to control the ball a little bit more. And as you said, Colin Morikawa is someone that I'm really excited to see. And then the other great question, Tom, is can the English have a win at home? So they come with a pretty strong contingent this time around. Tommy Fleetwood is a local.
Yeah.
Tyrrell Hatton, if he can keep his own mental game in check, I think he's going to be pretty successful here. And as you said, Fitzpatrick, the Yorkshire boy, so only comes from a couple of hours down the road. I think he's going to be a real threat as well. The Aussies, who do you like?
Well, I think for me, like I said, I think Cam Smith, but Milton Lead was so good last week at the Scottish Open. I think he's got the potential to be a top 10 player in the world if he can just get his head right a little bit more and sort of not have those holes where he has those sloppy doubles and triples. You know, bogey, of course, is fine. You know, that's part of golf, but he just has those lapses. But I liked what I saw last week. I think it's out of Cam Smith and Mingwu, the top Aussie, and I hope one of them goes deep on the Sunday, you know, as we're going into the back nine. And like I said, I'm really excited to see what Travis Smythe can do in a major,
Yeah.
to see, you know, whether or not he has what it takes, you know, when there's that pressure and expectation and these huge crowds. So they're the ones, but if I had to pick a top one, I think it's out of Cam Smith and Minwoo. I'll go with Smith for me.
Okay, Minwoo Lee, I'm prepared to rule out. I just think he has been such a letdown in major championships.
Yep.
Great player, but he's not going to be suited by this course. He loves to pull out driver and hit it all over the ballpark, and you just cannot get away with that on a links layout exactly like this. Cam Smith, I think, will be one to watch. I'm just going to get everyone to keep an eye out for Cameron John,
Yeah,
who has
like
got
it.
in on the strength of performances on the Australasian Tour this year. He has won the Vic Open, which is very, very similar to a links course. It's
Yep.
going to be playing in conditions and wind. He has won a couple of times at the national tournament, so down there at the bottom of Cape Shank, very, very similar conditions as well. It'll be a huge step up for him. But I just feel like he's the sort of guy who is going to be very, very determined to control his ball flight. He's not going to be too aggressive. And I just feel like this is a course that if you want to be aggressive for all 4 days, you might get away with it for 1 or 2 days, but I don't know if you're going to get away with it for all 4. You're going to get found out at some point. And so Cameron John might not be the best Australian, but I wouldn't be surprised if he pegs a few of the bigger names back once or twice. It's going to all be remain to be seen. Righto, Tommy. I've got some head-to-head battles. You are the expert in all things sport, and I just want you to try and pick off who you think is going to be higher up the leaderboard at the end of the Open
Ooh, I like
Championship
it.
when we get there early on Monday morning. So the two big dogs to start us off, Scheffler, McIlroy. Who you got?
No, I'll go with McIlroy. I think form's better. He had that poor third round last week, but Scheffler first missed cut. Just a few things off. I think Roy for me. You?
Okay, I'm happy to take Scheffler. If you're
Okay.
pushed, you've already done this, haven't you? Cam Smith, Min Woo. You said Cam Smith.
I'll go Cam Smith.
I'll go Cam Smith.
Love it.
John Rahm, Tommy Fleetwood.
Homeboy, Tommy Fleetwood. I think he'll go very close this week. I hope he does.
I think the conditions will suit him. Normally, I would say John Rahm, but in the conditions that we're expecting, I think a guy who's elite with his irons and isn't so bothered about bombing at 325. I think you're right. I'll go Tommy Fleetwood. Bryson DeChambeau versus Jordan Spieth.
I'm going to go with Spieth. DeChambeau just blazes too much. You spoke about error driving. I think he does that too much. So I'm going with Spieth.
Correct me here too. Bryson DeChambeau versus The Cut.
I think he'll make it. He's a competitive beast, but just.
Victor Hovland versus Wyndham Clark.
I'm with you. I like Wyndham Clark this week. I didn't mention him, but he will be very competitive this week. I'll go with Wyndham.
Victor's been successful in Open Championships before.
He has.
Was third to Cam Smith in 2022. Last one, Tyrrell Hatton versus Bob McIntyre.
I like Bob McIntyre as well. Liked what I saw last week. I think Bob Mac's going to go close. I'm going on the guys from the UK, but I'm with Bob Mac this week.
I reckon both of those guys, there's a new code of conduct for players. I reckon both of those guys will incur a 2-stroke suspension for throwing a club somewhere, and that will be the end of them. Last one, New Zealand versus Australia. So I'll just give you the list. For New Zealand, Ryan Fox, Daniel Hillier, Kazuma Kabori. And for Australia, Scott, Herbert Smythe, Smith, Day, Minwoo, and Cameron John.
Got to go with the Aussies. Got to be patriotic, even if I don't believe it. So I'm going to stick with the Aussies.
Daniel Hillier and Kazuma Kabori are going to be absolute menaces in that one. It would not shock me if we got it to New Zealand. Tommy, it's going to be a great week. I am so looking forward to the Open Championship. We'll be no doubt texting back and forth as all of our selections come up. Just to confirm, I've got Chris Gotter up. Who have you got?
I'll go with Matt Fitzpatrick.
And you got a roughie?
Is Morikawa roughy enough? Cam Smith, if not.
Cam Smith is absolutely a roughie. I'll take Patrick Reed as my roughie. We'll compare our notes next week. Good on you, mate. You're about to do all of your work in the Channel 9 newsroom. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on Strike Me Pink.
Thanks, Wookie.
See you, mate.